Hey guys, welcome back. As always, Broly Gamer here. Like I said last time, unfortunately we lost the audio for the recording, so that does mean I am doing the commentary after the fact, not live like I normally do. We did notice last time that we are going to have to go to war with Rome. I am moving my units down to the south and building a ancient wall to help defend our capital. As we move our guys down to the south, we do encounter a few barbarians and quickly dispatch of them, and by doing so we learn that Rome is sending out another settler, likely toward our lands. So as I continue moving our troops to the south, we do make sure that we upgrade our archer, and I realize as we finish the ancient walls that it is going to be a great timing for boosting the engineering. Then once we actually complete the Great Walls, we will have just enough time to train another archer to send him down to the front, before being able to build our first catapult to add to our military strength. And as we continue moving our troops, I take a good hard look at Satia and try and get an idea of what would be the best angle of attack for sieging the city. Right about here is where I realize that this path is going to be a very difficult path to navigate because of the marsh, hill, and forests that are in between the mountains and the coast. At this point I also realize I should have switched off of theology a few turns ago, and I try and see what civic I should go for. I end up going for recorded history because I realized I'm most likely not going to be building a second campus district anytime soon. I also take a look at the Great Prophet progress and see that we have 5 Great Prophet points per turn, while the other unknown civilization is only making 2, so we should catch up on them pretty quickly. Right here we take a look at what religions have currently been established, and I sort of speculate as to who has created them so far, and we take a double check on the status of earning the Great Prophet, just to make sure that we don't run out of time to get a Great Prophet where we need one for our desired victory condition. I'm also hoping that the barbarians take that unescorted settler from the Romans. That way we can steal it from them without actually having to go to war. But then I see the Legion right next to it and think that that hope is a little unlikely. We are continuing to move our units forward, and I see even more Roman units. So I think they are probably well equipped for the oncoming war. So we then switch over to building our first catapult in our capital. Since we just finished researching engineering, I do pick currency as our next technology, since we've already achieved that boost for the Eureka moment. I double check Yerevan and see that it's very unlikely that we are going to get the ironworking quest completed, because the closest iron is far too far away for us to complete it in a reasonable time. I am, however, at this point strongly considering that northern western coast city to have 1 iron at least in our network. With Trajan's units all in the south, or seemingly all in the south, protecting that 1 settler, I do move the units around a little bit more strategically, because I think at this point it would be smart to at least entertain the idea of declaring war on Trajan, or at least denouncing him, so we have the ability to declare war on him in the next 5 or so turns. Here I'm deliberating on what unit I want to build next. I do look at the galley and think that it wouldn't be a bad idea to build at least 1, if not 2, to get the shipbuilding Eureka boost, because we don't have any knowledge of the coast, and we are kind of limited because of losing our scout earlier on in the game. Here I'm trying to figure out when would make the most sense to actually denounce Trajan, and right there I do see them clearing the barbarian camp with a legion unit, which is not really that good for us. We were hoping that the Romans would have some trouble with the barbarians in the south. As I'm maneuvering around the troops, I do realize that it's kind of dumb to try and have every one of my troops in the front, especially because of the tight quarters, and as I'm trying to skip turns with the hoplite and the archer, I accidentally switch them places, causing me to be an entire another turn or two behind being set up in terms of my formation that I wanted to have. And he does give us the warning saying, hey, you need to move your troops, and we ignore it because we do plan on denouncing him very shortly, and whenever I ask him not to settle near me, he outrightly tells me no. So basically that is the spark of conflict, if you will. And here I make sure I don't do the exact same thing with the troop movement as I did the turn prior. So I start looking around and look at that one tile gap leading into the lake that's above Satia, and consider placing the archer we're keeping at home, if you will, on that tile to give us the opportunity to fire at units if they embark any. I also want to move my hoplite in front of that heavy chariot because it is an anti-cavalry unit and would get the bonus for attacking or defending against it. He does move his troops back out of our sight lines, so that does make me want to scout a little bit closer, if you will. And so I move my warrior up and kind of get my melee units into position because I assume that he's not smart enough to bring the heavy chariot around in kind of like a flanking maneuver. But we're also only a couple turns away from completing our catapult, and that's right whenever Satia finishes their city walls. And I look at it, and I'm surprised because Satia actually has a better defensive strength than Rome. And I realize at this point that I was withholding envoys unintentionally. So I put 2 envoys into Hattusa to give me an ally to the north to potentially split up the Roman forces and distract them a little bit, requiring them to defend against the Hattusan troops as well as my troops. Since I have put in the envoys into Hattusa, I do go ahead and denounce Trajan, meaning that we are then on a countdown timer of 5 turns until we can declare a formal war against him. I do see that he buys the tile for the diamonds there, so I'm hoping at this point I have the opportunity to steal that worker from him, but at the same time I would have to be smart about it and keep my troops defended as best as possible while doing so. With my second city, I do go back to building melee units. I decide to go with a warrior, since it's very likely that we will lose a few of those early on in the war, since Trajan already has the upgrade to his equivalent of the swordsman, and it being his special unit, it is stronger than a typical swordsman, so it is going to hit us pretty hard. I also go for a second catapult in the capital, because multiple ranged units is never a bad thing, especially whenever you're potentially attacking 2 cities at once, or trying to get that much more damage inflicted on the city walls to limit the turns that they can hit you back, basically. So as I'm preparing for war and waiting the 5 necessary turns after denouncing Trajan, I look down at his newest city, which at this point is only about maybe 4 or 5 turns old, and it already has city walls. It's insane, the production boost that these AI get, because in a human player city that would never ever be possible. But I continue moving my troops forward regardless, and at this point consider focusing my initial attack on the newest city. That way we can sweep around and attack maybe from the south and have a little bit less constriction in troop movement. We also discover our first natural wonder. It is the Cliffs of Dover, and unfortunately it has no benefit to us finding it, but it is nice to know that it's over there. As I'm looking over my troops, I see a new unit spawn in Hattusa, so I look at what it would cost to levy the military and accidentally do so. I find out after the fact it was only 130 gold, but we do accidentally levy the military of Hattusa whenever I was just trying to look, and I consider the idea of basically just pestering them in the north with those heavy chariots. I was just checking there to see how many turns we may have had left. It doesn't actually tell you, but it would tell you if you are ready by basically saying that you can declare a formal war. I think at this point we were probably 3 or 4 turns into our denouncement. So up right now I'm just waiting for the turn to click over to move my temporary units, the Hattusan heavy chariots, around, just to try and get a better idea of how I can annoy Trajan from the north there with those units and hopefully not get them killed. Again, because we are waiting for the denouncement to become fulfilled, I guess, we are just basically positioning our units in the best possible way to get the most attacks and best defense all at the same time, as well as making fresh units from our second city. And right here I realized that I should probably build a district in our second city. That way we can improve the housing. So I go with a harbor, and I do buy that tile so it has a adjacency bonus of +2 gold because of being adjacent to both of those fish resources. And now we've earned the Casus Belli of formal war, so I do declare war on Trajan and try and get a couple pot shots off on this scout, just to entice him to potentially attack us rather than having to attack him necessarily with our melee units. Again, I keep moving the temporary units down. It is very hilly and dense with forest and jungle, so it does take a while to get anywhere up there. But we're also kind of using it to get a better lay of the land. Understanding the layout is sometimes very important, especially in war. And I do move up with my archer to get a better view of Satia, and by doing so I unintentionally put him at great risk, and I leave my warriors where they are just to hopefully be able to distract the legion units to attacking them. And then I take another look at the profit situation, realize that someone else got a profit by most likely buying it, since we had more great profit points per turn, and I do decide to go for the Holy Site Prayers project to get us more great profit points once the Prayers project is complete, to solidify us getting the one of the final 2 great profits. I don't want to wait for the last great profit in the event that Arabia is in the game. I don't know if they are, but if they are in the game, that means that we would lose out if we were going for the last profit and they hadn't earned one yet, because their ability is to get the last great profit available. So this is where I start actually moving my units to the south, and I do bring in that additional archer since we lost the one we unfortunately pushed forward on Satia, and I'm hoping that as I'm pushing the units forward, the legions don't go through that one tile pass between those mountains to cause us even more trouble with our reinforcement units. I do take advantage of a situation where I can steal a worker and continue kind of exploring with that heavy chariot that's up in the jungle. So I was lucky enough that the city attacked the warrior rather than my hoplite, and I do have a minor potential issue with that knight coming. I do kind of get disturbed by the idea that they already have knights, which would put them an entire age above us, and I am genuinely concerned. But luckily we were able to steal one of their units. We've already killed one of their units, and we're not in a terrible position to defend this knight because we do have anti-cavalry units in our hoplites. But I am going to call it there for today. If you liked the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. My other videos are on screen. Links for my Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit are in the description below. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.